Spectral Throw will hit 5 to 6 times per attack with proper positioning. Multiple hits per Spectral Throw projectile are possible because it can hit a target again after every 225 milliseconds. Due to that fact, the high effectiveness of added damage the skill has, Spectral Throw is a powerful skill, allowing you to progress through the Atlas quickly. However, this skill won't be as good at progression as the current top tier league style builds, as it requires more investment and skills like Detonate Dead or Bone Shatter. Cons are that if you position too close to your target, or your opponent is highly mobile, you will end up hitting less often than 5 times per attack. Also, there's a ramp time with Spectral Throw due to projectiles having low speed and the need to return for additional hits. Finally, this is not a beginner friendly skill as positioning and gearing matters a lot. You want your Spectral Throw to hit in a way that the split projectiles won't spread and fly out too far. This means you want the opponent to be at a spot of about 90% of the maximum distance that your Spectral Throw can travel. Also, you want to make sure to get the full far shot bonus, which is at a distance of 7 meters, or formerly known as 70 radius, 40% projectile speed, which you get from ballistics, and 2 minor Deadeye ascendancy nodes. Spectral Throw will have a bit over 7 meter range. So we start off with a Duelist Mule, and from the Duelist we get a Rustic Sash and an Iron Ring. This will help us get through the first act. You don't have to use these swords, you can, like, two-handers are really good. At level 12, this is what our tree looks like. This is for Merveil. After Merveil, you want to take the Elemental Mastery. After that you go for Multi-Shot. Before you have the Text Fire and additional projectile, you don't want to use Sniper's Mark. At level 24 you can buy Anger, which you will use with Herald of Ice. You want to take the claw nodes and you want to switch from any type of weapon to claws only, and you allocate the claw mastery that doubles the attack speed bonus from dual wielding. And after that you can go for life nodes, especially you want the life mastery that gives you 50 to maximum life. So after Dominus, in Act 4 and in Act 5 you go to the Trickery and the Blood Siphon area. You do that because after we kill Kitawa, we can get Wrath, and with the Charisma nodes we are able to use 2 50% auras, and we need enough intelligence, which we get by going to this area. At this point your damage should be really good. Afterwards you can go the Mark Mastery if you feel like your single target damage is lacking, but you want to pick up the accuracy nodes because at that point your hit chance is gonna start being really low. So at this point you probably at Brian King or Arakali. At level 70 you want to get, you're about to hit maps or you're already in maps, you want the suppression wheel with the chance to suppress spell damage is lucky. And you could also pick the Inveterate, no, it's not called Inveterate, Entrench suppression node. You also want to go Precise Technique, and for that you will need the second accuracy wheel over here. And at level 80 you're close to pivoting to a Nightblade setup. Once you have the notable claws of the Hawk, I would switch to Nightblade and take off Precise Technique. Go for the Assassination node. Then you have a lot of damage nodes that you can pick next. You can go from the Shadows with the Elusive, also grants 40% to Critical Strike multiplier. You can go Heartseeker, and you also want the Claws of the Falcon. So at 90 you have all these crit nodes, and you should be able to kill Exarch and Eta at this point. So that's your leveling tree, and that's our day 1 setup with an Essence crafted, like a really cheap Essence crafted Imperial Claw. There's a tier 2 Wrath Essence. You can use Wrath Anger or Hatred, and what I would do is just craft a tier 2 attack speed, crafted tier 2 attack speed. The setup has roughly 1.4 million, which is enough to kill Eta Exarch and clear tier 16s. On my Eta Exarch run I had 900k damage. The Eta Exarch fight was a bit long. Definitely want to go for 1.5 million. I think should be comfortable. So you get an Essence crafted. If you get something better than that, that's good. On your shield you want to have a crafted attack speed suffix. Fill out resistances. You're probably just gonna like most of your gear is gonna be gear that you pick up from the ground, your ID. I would buy a 5-link and essence crafted with greed essence, wrath, anger, hatred. It doesn't need to be that great. Glove slot is, I say, fairly important. There are 2 damage mods that we can get: increased attack speed and accuracy rating. Like in this setup, it gives me about 13% more damage, and you do that by using seal essences. But if you don't have enough money, you don't need to do that. You can just buy a glove with accuracy rating, and it doesn't need to be a lot of accuracy. You can get 100% hit chance also with the arrogance and precision setup. It's boots, pretty standard, ID boots. Jewelry is pretty important because you can get flat damage on your jewelry. You can get increased elemental damage with attacks. You could essence craft using anguish, suffering, or torment. These give you flat damage. Identified amulet will probably be enough. So for your belt, you can get a prison weave or a belt of the deceiver. Both unique, should be fairly cheap and accessible early on. Oh, I forgot about the helmet. Rat's Nest is a lot of damage. If you prefer to be a bit tankier, you can also go for the Elvor, which I think is a pretty good helmet. It gives you 150 life when you suppress spell damage. And with this helmet, you also don't need to go entrench anymore. You're quite tanky against spell hits, because most spell hits, when you get attacked by spells, most of the times it's from packs, and most of the times it's a lot of small hits. So this helmet is really good, especially the line that recovers life when you suppress spell damage. So these are your 2 options for your helm. Like Flask, pretty standard. So this is your day 1 setup, or day 2 if you don't play that much. Afterwards, you want to upgrade your claw, and the way I would do this is I would get a fractured attack speed claw, and then just use Shrieking, Essence of Hatred, Anger, or Wrath till you hit a second good mod. Then I would craft either elemental damage if this weapon penetrates elemental resistances, or the crit mod that gives strength and intelligence. You also would want to get a 6-link. At this point, this fairly good damage, 4.5 million. You should be cruising through tier 16s. For your chest implicit, you want the increased effect of non-cursed auras and anger increased aura effect for a little bit of extra damage. If possible, you can also go for suppression rolls. Gloves are fairly important. I would get the rage implicit. Rage gives us a lot of damage. I think about 25 stacks we get about 10% more. Yeah, even more than 10%. And it also allows us to use Berserk to burst map bosses. So this is a really good implicit. You don't absolutely have to go for this. You can also go for intimidate or attack speed, but I would try to look for this implicit on the trade side, or maybe roll for it. It is fairly rare, so it might not be actually worth it to craft it yourself. Like I had scenarios where it took me like 100 of these embers and I didn't get it. Like if you don't get it, I would go for intimidate or attack speed, but it's a really good implicit. And for your rings, not much changes. Like I personally like amethyst rings on pretty much every build that I play. I'm usually a hardcore player, so getting chaos res, positive chaos res is pretty important. So I like amethyst rings. You can try to get increased elemental damage on your amulet, on your rings, but these are probably going to be fairly expensive early in the league. So this is your setup after farming red maps for a while, and after that I would already consider pivoting to a Dex stack. You want to prepare for a Dex stack setup using Hand of Thought in Motion and the Fractal Thoughts. Now this setup is 7.7. It's a bit squishier than a shield setup, but the upside of this equipment is that you get the dual wheel bonus, and it is doubled with the claw mastery. So you're really fast. You have very fast whirling blades, and there's some damage notes that you can pick too. So Dex stack, like mid-game Dex stacking, is pretty straightforward. You just get Sora essences, spam them on your equipment, look for good suffixes. What you could do on your ring is get 2 good suffixes, lock the suffixes, then Iceling tier 4, get a Veil modifier, block mana, and then you unveil, and in most cases you're going to get a live unveil, and then you can craft, for example, non-channeling skills have -7 to total mana cost. Pretty much every gear slot you use Essence of Sorrows. You also want a Brutal Restraint. If you don't know how to find the ideal Brutal Restraint, this is for you. So here you can look for the nodes that you want, and then you just click copy trade. So this is your mid-game setup. Like 3 doesn't really change much. You obviously get the projectile mastery that gives you increased projectile damage and the increased dexterity. Also this one's fairly good. Yeah, and this is pretty much mid-game setup. And here I have a sort of late game setup that I played last league in Hardcore Ancestor. So this is not deck stacking. This was just crafted a Nightblade Claw by using a tier 1 attack speed fractured claw. I spammed a bunch of anger, wrath or hatred essences till you get another good tier 2 or tier 1 flat damage mod. Then I used a tier 4 Iceling to unveil. Attacks with this weapon penetrate elemental resistances. What I could have done in addition, could have protected suffixes and then augment crit for crit multi, and then craft crit chance. So it's missing a bit of damage. So on my shield, I have a Shaper shield. The reason for that is I want the socketed gems to have 30% increased reservation efficiency. What that allows us to do is if we can put 50% auras in our shield, and we'll be able to still have enough unreserved mana with the charisma node and the Ether implicit that gives mana reservation efficiency of skills on your helmet. And you can also have a low level precision even, but that also requires you to reduce your mana cost with crafts on your amulet. So I'm running Anger, Wrath and Grace, and they're all socketed to my shield. So this has 12.5 million damage. You maybe have noticed this build is using a lightning coil. We don't have determination, so our fizz mitigation is really bad. Which is why I rely on a lightning coil to mitigate any physical damage. What you also can do is use the Exarch implicit to have more physical damage taken as to all kinds of elements. Or you can also get a prefix craft that does the same thing, gives you physical damage from hits taken as a fire damage. It's boots, pretty standard. I would craft these kind of boots with anger, hatred and wrath essences until I get another good resistance roll with a good chance as spell damage. I would lock the suffixes, then Iceling tier 4 for an unveil movement speed, then craft maximum life. But I think I just hit this with one essence. So amulet, pretty straightforward, get resistances and more damage. Like there's not much to say. Same for the other jewelry slots. So there's an interesting flask tag. There's a mod that allows you to gain flask charges when you deal a critical strike. You can only gain one flask charge every 100 milliseconds. So you want this mod only on one flask. Now the reason why I do this on a diamond flask is because it consumes the least amount of charges out of all these utility flasks, namely 20. I'm able to sustain this flask relatively more than the other flasks. I also have a cluster jewel setup, Fan of Blades notable, that gives me an additional projectile while I'm wielding a claw. Now this notable is very rare. I would craft this with alteration orbs, just spam. Ideally you buy this. Like crafting this yourself is probably going to be expensive. Someone who rolls claw nodes and probably will sell it. And I would just buy it. For your medium classes you want the projectile damage. Oh, and you can't target the Fan of Blades, it's not possible. It has the attack tag, but so do all other notables. So you really just, like I would alteration spam. And then there's the projectile cluster jewel. And the way you craft this is pretty simple. You use caster reforge in harvest and will guarantee the repeater node. And you do this caster reforge until you get a shrieking bolts notable. You don't want a notable that gives you projectile speed because it will make your Spectral Throw hit less often. And otherwise I have a Lethal Pride. It is, I don't think it's an optimal one, but hardly anyone was selling Lethal Pride, so that's, I think that's pretty much it for my setup. So this was my gear at the end of my Eta Exarch run, which took about 10 hours. I think it was a rather bad run. I think you can do it in 9 hours, probably 8 even. I was kinda unlucky. I think this is a really bad claw, but the rest of my gear is fine. This is 950k damage. Like, the Eta and Exarch fights took me about 5 minutes each, I think. I think the Exarch a bit longer, but this is also only a 4-link. So this is the late game setup. One hand of Thought and Motion has the implicit, where we gain a power charge on critical strike. On our Fractal Thoughts, we want the maximum power charges corruption implicit. For our chest, we want the suffix of Ash, which gives increased attack speed per 25 dexterity. Now it is going to be fairly difficult to get a good chest with pretty good suffixes. You would probably have to fracture this mod in order to get an actually decent chest. So I just put a crafted mod in this single line in this POB, and the rest of the gear is pretty straightforward. And you look for perfect suffixes. In this case, chance to suppress spell damage, attack speed, and then I just have crafted life. You don't really need more in my opinion. So for boots, we have Stormrider boots, which give us add lightning damage per accuracy rating, and since we are dex stacking, we have a lot of accuracy. And the way we craft this boot is we go for perfect suffixes, then lock the suffixes, Icelink tier 4, and unveil. I would go for chill immunity unveil, or you could also go for onslaught and kill if you're just mapping, and then you just craft life. So for your amulet, you need all attributes as a suffix, because this is how we fix our attribute requirements. And I would look for another good resistance roll and then reforge, lock the suffixes, and probably just do a reforge life and craft non-channeling skills have -7 to mana cost. Our rings, we go for 3 perfect suffixes and again lock suffixes. We use T4 Iceling, which gives us a veiled modifier, and then we block mana, and in most cases we will unveil maximum life, and then we just craft non-channeling skills have minus mana costs. And the belt is also pretty straightforward. 1/1 large cluster jewel with claw modifiers, and one notable should be Fan of Blades, so you can get an additional projectile. And for your Brutal Restraint jewel, you want the one with the number 1475, because it has a lot of notables with the increased dexterity line, and this will give us a lot of damage. So I have a campaign run. If you find something confusing about the leveling, you can either ask me in the comment section, or you can look at the full act run. I also have an Eta Exarch run. The run wasn't that really good, but I think someone might find it helpful. I don't know. I'll be leak starting this myself and probably make some update videos about the build. Maybe if I make some changes. Yeah, and that was the build guide. Thank you for watching.